Welcome to Comic Power. I am your host, Comic Killer 72. This segment today is called Wicked Wednesday. Every Wednesday is like Christmas for us nerds because that's when the new comics come out. These are my recommendations for the best books to pick up on Wednesday. But here's some other information first. I'm very active on Google Groups, and I think you should be too. One of those groups is called FAQs, which stands for First Appearance Comics Trends and Speculation, where we discuss news on the hottest comics out there in the business. Another group is called SICK, which stands for Speculate, Invest, Collect, which is very similar to FAQs in that we go over what's hot, how movie news influences prices, and other things related to comics from a speculator and investor type of viewpoint. I am a moderator at both of those groups, so come on down and say hi. The links will be in the description. I have special programming coming up for Women's History Month as well about the female contribution in comics. Look out for that soon. But for now, let's do what we came here today for, and that's New Comic Day. And DC Comics is giving us All-Star Batman number 8. This is the Batman series that's penned by Scott Snyder, who got famous for writing him on the New 52 version. He gave us stuff like The Court of Owls and Mr. Bloom, so he's already a legend for that. So they just turned him loose on this series so he can do whatever he wants to do with the character. Next up is even more Batman, and you know why. Yeah, that. It's Batman number 19, and this is part 4 of the I Am Bane storyline. The Joker may be Batman's arch enemy, but Bane is the most relentless one. The David Finch art looks fantastic, by the way. If you prefer Tim Sale, they have a variant for his version of it. Shown here, Bane is one of those villains you just love to hate. Next up is Harley Quinn number 16. As you can see, Power Girl makes her appearance, and she's still rocking that outfit that's way too inappropriate for today's times. When you see it cosplayed, you see what I mean. At this point, it's a self-deprecating joke. That's why she always shows up in the Harley title, because the series is never supposed to be taken seriously in the first place. It's sort of like slapstick comedy that you'll find in a Deadpool title these days. Harley number 16 also continues the Frank Cho variants, which have been tremendously popular. I wish that Frank Cho did a whole book interior art for Harley as well. Amanda Conner is no longer drawing the interior, but she's writing it and doing cover A. Next up is Wildstorm number 2. This is the universe that was created by Jim Lee and brought over from Image to DC Comics. I'm not sure if anyone was actually asking for this universe anymore, but they handed the project over to Warren Ellis, who's a very capable writer. We'll see what happens, but I'm not expecting anything big from this. But I must say I do like the variant, which is drawn by Afua Richardson. She's just one of the few African-American females that's drawing comics today. She's a fast-rising star, and I'll put her link in the description. You'll see more from her later. Next up is Super Sons number 2, and the title is what it sounds like. It's the sons of Batman and Superman teaming up. This is the type of project that has animated series written all over it, so you should be paying attention to it and jumping in its infancy. Their first meeting is in Superman number 10 in 2016, which I believe will prove to be a key issue in the future. The print runs are high, so it's going to take a while, but eventually you'll get there, especially if they make a cartoon out of them. Next up is Man Thundercats number 6 of a 6-part miniseries. So this is the conclusion. It's been a very popular miniseries. It is way overdue for a Thundercats or He-Man movie. If you grew up in the 80s like I did, then these characters are iconic due to the animated shows. They were only intended to be commercials to sell the toy, but they became much more than that. So you're telling me that the Transformers can have 5 movies and counting, and Thundercats and He-Man can't have 1? That doesn't make any sense. Somebody needs to get hot on these projects. There is a lot of money to be made here. Next up, let's see what Marvel is up to, and that's going to be The Amazing Spider-Man number 25. Marvel is going all out on this 25th issue. They're giving you an action figure variant. They're giving you a throwback 1960s looking variant. They're doing all kind of crazy stuff. That's just what publishers do on the first issue, the 25th issue, the 50th issue, the 100th issue, the 200th issue. They make a real big deal about it, even if nothing significant actually happens. In this issue, Norman Osborn is back for more trouble. In the first 25 years of Spider-Man, the Green Goblin was his archenemy, but now it's clearly Venom. Speaking of Venom, issue number 5 of his own series drops this week. Marvel tried to do different things with the character, such as make him a space knight, but nobody really cared about that stuff. They want him to be the brain-eating, Spider-Man-hating Venom that they all know, and that's what he's supposed to be. There's a Clayton Crane variant of this, which is going crazy on eBay and selling for all types of money. But like I said before, don't chase these variants. They're all overpriced. Next up is Monsters Unleashed number 5. This is the finale of a 5-part miniseries. It was a lot of fun. Marvel tried to cross it over with their main books, which they should not have done, but they're greedy. This is a Adam KUBERT cover, by the way. He's a real legend in comics. This cover is a little busy for me. I'm assuming that the editors made him cram all these characters in here because it just doesn't flow right. Even though it's drawn very well, it's just over crammed with characters. It's just too much. Next up is Uncanny X-Men number 19. We have a battle between Psylocke and Magneto. Magnetism versus psychic swords. I'm down for this. Next up is Black Panther, World of Wakanda number 5. This is the finale of the story arc for Dawn of the Midnight Angels. This is a spin-off from Black Panther's main title and gives us a deeper look at Black Panther's all-female security force in action. This cover art is also done by Afua Richardson. I told you that name was coming back again. She's double dipping in DC and Marvel. Like I said, she's a rising star. Watch out for her. She's got some big things coming down the pipeline. Next up is our report on independent comics and small publishers. First up is DOLLFACE number 1, which is going to a second printing. This is from Action Lab Danger Zone, and it's proof that comic creators use drugs, because the premise is that it's a 17th century witch hunter brought into the modern day and trapped in the body of a life-size doll. Sounds crazy, but it works. Dan Mendoza is the guy who made this, the same guy behind Zombie Tramp. Next up is All New Soulfire number 1 from Aspen Inc. This tiny publisher has some of the best looking artwork in the business. The company has survived despite the passing of its founder Michael Turner, who died of cancer back in 2008. Mike left massive archives of his work though, so they're using his art for special variant covers like this special Spider-Man cover I'm showing here, published last July. Long live Aspen Comics and RIP to Michael Turner. He was a legend. Next up is Neil Gaiman, American Gods Shadows number 1. I know I overused the word legend, but Neil is definitely one of them. He's the guy that got famous for doing Sandman in the late 80s and early 90s. He's one of those guys that helped comics mature and not be comic booky, but high literature science fiction. Next up, let's show some love to the world's largest independent publisher, Image Comics. First up is Horizon number 9. I know everything can't become a hit, but this is one science fiction book that got overlooked. For plot details, go back and watch my video from July 10th, 2016, about 4 minutes and 36 seconds in. Horizon is an overlooked gem. Next up is Kill or Be Killed number 7. This is the story of a young man named Dylan who survives a suicide attempt and is triggered by some entity to go out and become a vigilante. It's like Moon Knight meets the Punisher meets Kick-Ass. Issue number 1 was a surprise hit and it went to a 4th printing. The Dylan character is on the radar of the NYPD now and they're closing in on him. Next up is Sex Criminals number 17. It's the return after a long hiatus of this critically acclaimed title. It's a story of a couple that can stop time when they orgasm together, so they use this power to go out and rob banks. It sounds completely ludicrous, but Mac Fraction makes it work. So they're the sex criminals, so if there's sex criminals, there must be sex police. And we're learning more about those characters as this develops. They're also continuing the practice of XXX covers, which are polybagged and you can't see through it, so stores can sell this without being accused of selling porn. Next up is Rockstars number 4. I might be the only person in the world that's actually reading this book. It's the story of a rock and roll history nerd and a tabloid journalist that team up to solve some groupie murders back in the 1970s. It's probably a niche read. I like it because I'm a fan of classic rock. Pink Floyd, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, stuff like that. Next up is Spawn, issue 271. This title is on the verge of being the longest continuous published independent title in history. A Spawn rebooted movie is way overdue. The word is it's not going to happen anytime soon because Todd McFarlane feels he needs to direct it. Yo Todd, dude, that's not going to happen. I know Spawn's your baby, but come on bruh, come on. As we get closer to issue 300, I hope he's got something good up his sleeve for it. Next up is the Speculation Pick of the Week. And that's going to be God Country number 3. This book, this blew us away when it came out in January 2017. It's a story about a senile old man who finds an enchanted sword after a tornado in West Texas. Have you seen the prices on issue number 1? It's gotten as high as $50 for a raw copy. And speaking of issue number 1, it's going to a 3rd print. And issue number 2 has also dropped and it's going to a 2nd print. So all this is coming out this week. Issue number 3, 1st print. Issue number 1, 3rd print. Issue number 2, 2nd. Get on board now while it's early. This is the hottest book in comics so far for 2017. Before we close, there's a few more indies I want to mention. Next up is Warhammer 40,000's Revelations number 1 of a 4-part miniseries. This is one of the best looking covers I've seen this year. That is awesome. This is based on the tabletop game produced by Games Workshop. Also from Titan Comics is The Forever War #2 of a 6-part miniseries. This is a comic adaptation of a classic novel from 1974. Issue #1 came out swinging, so I'm getting the whole 6-issue series, and you should too, or at least pick up the trade paperback when it comes out. Now let's close with some offerings from Valiant Comics. First up is Divinity 3, Escape from the Gulag 396. If you haven't been reading the Divinity miniseries, this is not going to make any sense. So don't touch this unless you have. It's a Archer and Armstrong story. If you don't know what Gulag is, it was a Soviet Union era forced labor camp. If you didn't comply with what the state wanted, this is where they sent you. So yeah, in this one shot, Archer and Armstrong are going to bust out a one. Next up is Savage #3, which is going to a second print, and this second print is a variant by Louis LaRosa. Valiant does not own the rights to Turok, so they created their own original character for that genre. It was a 4-issue miniseries and it was widely successful. Every issue released has gone to a second print. And last but not least is Harbinger Renegade #2, which is going to a second print. I promise one day to do a Harbinger origin story to explain what's going on. The first appearance of the Harbinger Renegades is in Harbinger #1 back in 1992. One of the most coveted key issues of the 90s. That's about it for today. Thank you for watching Wicked Wednesday, where I review all the new comic books for a new comic day. Be sure to follow my blog at comicpower.net. On social media, follow me at facebook.com/comicpower.net and comicpower-universe.tumblr.com. And don't forget twitter.com/comicpowersub. I also sell comics on eBay at this link. This is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying bye-bye. And don't forget to share this video, click on subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and tell everyone you know about this channel to help it grow. Thank you for your support.